Welcome to this episode of the Be Raire Podcast with me, Jessica Kimber. And today we have Sharni and Kris, founders of Synergy Sales Consultant. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Jess.
Thanks, Jess. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. And I'm super excited to speak to you both as well, because as you know, the Be Raire podcast is all about teaching recruiters and sales professionals to be rare, be unique, be different and stand out. And you guys have had quite the journey between recruitment and sales. So yes, super excited for you to share your story and your learns as well. So what I wanted to kick off with is, Sharni, you are a new mum and you've had your own business, you've had your own recruitment agency, and now you're working now you are the co-founder of Synergy Sales Consulting as well. So tell me about your journey. We'll start with recruitment. How did you get into starting your own agency?
Well, I think like most people, I sort of fell into recruitment. I kind of hate telling that story because I feel like it's a career that people should be gunning to pursue, but it's the reality for most people. So I was working in real estate sales and I was also studying organizational psychology, and I got really fascinated in building high-performing teams. So I sort of recognized a few things in the real estate industry that I was like, oh, I don't think this is really for me. And I just ended up working in recruitment because I thought, like, I was studying HR and org psych and I thought it was kind of HR-y. And then my first week, I realized it was sales. And so I was pleasantly surprised with the nature of working in recruitment. I worked for quite a large agency. I started as a blue collar resourcer. So I was like, I guess, very entry level recruitment role. Within a couple of months, maybe 2 months, I was promoted to an account manager and I got given like my own kind of territory and had to build my own desk. And I did that pretty quickly. And I guess they were quite happy with me. So I got promoted into the specialist team, which I was quite young at the time, looking back, to be recruiting the roles I was recruiting. But yeah, grateful that I got given that opportunity. And I also started in temp, which I guess is, I loved that I had that opportunity to start in temp because I think it gave me really well-rounded experience. And then I guess I was a couple of years into my recruitment career when I sort of looked at the career path within the agency I was working in. And I guess I was kind of looking, going, well, I can go into a management role, but that really kind of seemed like the only pathway to progress, and I didn't want to stay stagnant in what I was doing. And I'd always thought about starting my own business, but thought it was way out of reach, especially in recruitment. But yeah, at the time I met with a friend who actually worked in real estate, and he said, oh, do you want to come back to real estate? Because I was missing like the personal development focus and, you know, the training and just that sort of high performing culture that the real estate industry seems to have. And I didn't want to go back into real estate, but I recognized an opportunity. There wasn't anyone specializing in real estate recruitment in Newcastle at that time. And so I'd gotten myself kind of in a financial position where it wasn't a massive risk to leave and do my own thing. And I think we had a similar sort of thought that I just did the calcs and I was like, if I leave, I need to place like 8 people in a year and that's at a pretty low fee to cover my income. And I just thought, well, if I can't do that, there's something seriously wrong. Maybe I need to consider another career. So I did that really quickly. Like I just took the leap and did that, replaced my income very quickly. And then I started hiring a team and that was really cool and loved my time recruiting real estate agents in Newcastle. Built a really cool little team. And then I met Kris. That sort of threw a bit of a spanner in the works. We had a pretty crazy, I guess our first date was pretty crazy. We flew over to Panama and for our first date. I'd known him for a while at this point in time, so we had a mutual client.
It wasn't just a Tinder hookup that ended up in Panama.
I was like, wow, that's a big date if you just met.
That would be very risky. So Chris's background is sales trainer, sales consultant, and we had a mutual client, so we knew each other pretty well by then, but had only met once, so it was a bit of a risk flying over to Panama. So that first date went well, and we ended up back in a relationship by the end of that first date, and
which was 6 weeks.
It was 6 weeks in the end. So we ended up spending 6 weeks traveling, which was really cool.
Oh wow, that's so sweet. I love that. It's very rare to hear that as well these days, isn't it?
Yeah, it's super rare.
Wow.
It was very unexpected, but and we were so busy that we couldn't actually arrange to meet from the Gold Coast and Newcastle. Yet we sort of somehow found a month and 6 weeks to go on a trip to Panama, Mexico, and New York. So,
wow,
good little start to our relationship. Around that time, I'd sort of been thinking, I've always valued freedom, and I think that was a big kind of driver behind why I started my own business, so I could have freedom over delivery, freedom over creativity, and I was kind of feeling like the recruitment I was doing was making me feel really tied to Newcastle, and I didn't want to be. I grew up there, and I just felt like it was time to move. And so Kris was living on the Gold Coast and in a beautiful part of the Gold Coast here. And so I made the decision to move up to the Gold Coast. And the plan was I was going to go down and be in Newcastle for a month. And then maybe 2 weeks later, we found out I was pregnant. So, which would have been, a bit of a journey in itself. But I ended up getting incredibly sick. We didn't know at the time, but I had a condition called hyperemesis, and I just thought I had first trimester is always pretty rough, and you get morning sickness and can be feeling extremely fatigued and things like that. So we just thought that was going to go away at 12 weeks. We'll just grind through. I was also I was just feeling there was just friction in the business at the time, and it just felt hard, and probably because it was the work that I was doing there was a extremely limited talent pool in a really candidate short market anyway, but very specific to the geographical area. And it was quite a small talent pool. So it was difficult, the work we were doing. And so, I ended up being really sick. And then I think it was the second hospital trip, we jumped on a call with one of we just had a coaching call booked in for the next day, and one of our coaches and mentors who had been working with Kris and I separately for a long time, but then together when we were starting to kind of merge what we were doing, he was just like, Sharni cannot be working. This is too, this is just, she's too sick. It cannot go on. And so Kris got kind of catapulted into a recruitment business. And it's actually funny because the reason Kris and I reconnected is that he called me and said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a recruitment business. I just really want to get a bit of insight. And I was like, sure, yeah, let's jump. And then 6 months later, I'm handing over my recruitment business to him, basically to run and run my team and introducing him to all my clients. And he just had to.
I've got pretty much a full-time job at the same time as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had my gig was probably 50 hours a week, I'd say. I was working a lot in my current role. I was a VP of sales on a large remote team, and I had 12 in my team. And but then, Sharni being so sick, and we had jobs on, we had staff to manage, and so I got a really swift sort of, I guess, peek into a recruiting company and how it works. It was, and I'd recruited before, so I knew how to kind of sort of how to do that. I knew how to kind of close people on ideas. So closing a client on a candidate, or a candidate on a position was something that I felt like I could do. So, and then managing the team as well. But there was a lot there. And it was either like we either just dropped, the decision was we either had to drop all of our clients and sort of just stop everything, or we kind of just had to keep pushing through, and I was going to take on both.
Wow.
And just let Sharni, because she was so sick, that just give her that rest and give her emotionally, mentally, physically the rest. And we decided to push through. We had some good pipeline, and we actually we did pretty well,
breaking all the records.
Wow.
I was laying on the floor barking orders at Chris with a bucket next to me, and he was like directing the ship. So funny.
Oh, wow. Honestly, good for you both, though. I feel like that's just in both of your DNA. Like, your personality is, screw it, we're going to make it work no matter what. And that's shone through, which is amazing to hear. But Kris, I'm intrigued. What are the similarities between like a sales-based role and a recruitment consultant role?
Well, there are a lot. There are big parallels for being a salesperson and a recruiter. Like, a salesperson has to manage people and relationships and close and convert people to an idea, influence and lead. And that's really what sales is about. It's about using your communication skills to get other people to think the way that you're thinking, so that they can take certain actions. And so that's really what recruitment is. It's about managing clients. Obviously, signing up clients is number one, is signing up the client, getting the business, closing the business, and getting commitment is a big one. So there's sales, you got to sell the client. And then I guess as if you're recruiting for the client, there is a whole lot of selling that has to happen. We have to position the client to expect certain things, so they don't have their expectations in the clouds with what we're going to submit, or what we're going to present. So we have to manage expectations first. So we have to pre-frame our clients and sort of manage their expectations. With candidates, we have to do the same, and we have to, a lot of qualifying. So there's so much qualifying as well. So in sales, it's about, not about volume as much. It is about sort of making sure you qualify quickly and get the people who aren't the right fit out as quickly as possible, so you can preserve your time and focus on higher dollar productive activities. And so in candidate world, like screening, you got to screen quickly, you got to qualify people quickly, but then you've got to build relationships with candidates, which is something that I've not personally, as a salesperson, as a closer, I'm usually about a bit of a shorter sales cycle. I'm more of a, I'm very good at closing the candidate on the job, or the client on the candidate. But then when it comes to like what I've seen Sharni do, which I think is really what a great recruiter is. It's really showed me what a great recruiter is. It's about building relationships with candidates. It's having a conversation at 2 p.m. in the middle of your calendar with a candidate who you may or may not have anything, there may or may not be any benefit to you long term, but it's just about building a relationship. And then 2 months later, there's a role, and then you've built the relationship, and you're able to place it because you've built that relationship. And so I think the parallels of sales are really, they're really close. But I think recruitment, managing the multiple stakeholders with the clients and candidates, but then long-term relationships over months and years is really something that's so important in recruitment. And I'm seeing that a lot more now.
Yeah, absolutely. So important. And I think sometimes that's the hardest thing, right? Because we're in the only sales role where the end product can say no as well. Like, at least in other sales, if you're selling a course or a program or a product or a system or software, it's there, it's readily available, and it does what it says, right? But we're in that complete opposite where it's like we can get something that does what it says, and then that thing says nope, don't want it anymore. So it's really, really hard to
we had that a couple of times. Never having worked in a recruiting business and sort of being thrust into this in a real estate recruitment business, which I feel like is unique because you're dealing with really A-type personalities and different personalities in that space. But we had a few where it was, I couldn't believe what was going on with the candidates. And just people who'd signed offer and acceptance, they were due to start, and then the day they were due to start and come back to their go to the new role, that they had accepted a counter offer and they were pulling the pin, and after an 8-week notice period, and just all sorts of stuff that was just tear your hair out kind of stuff that I hadn't seen before, which is unique recruitment.
I think human beings are so unpredictable. It's like, unless they're physically there on the first day, I'm still skeptical whether someone's going to start. And even though I recruiters still do this. Like, they'll still ghost an interview, and I'm like, you're a recruiter. What are you doing? You know this process better than anyone. So yeah, I can definitely relate.
Doesn't
and I
surprise
think
me, people are people though, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. But look, I think I would, in my opinion as well, and I've recruited on behalf of real estate agencies in the past, and I would say real estate recruitment and rec to rec are probably the most closely aligned because the personalities are very similar. It's very talent short. It's very unpredictable. There's some big personalities in the space. So yeah, I feel like I felt your pain.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
Pain and pleasure. There's
very
difficult.
difficult. There's a lot of good stuff. Like, we had some awesome results as well, which I found super satisfying and like the worst part about recruitment, where the product can say no, is harsh. But then your product, if you're in sales, often your product doesn't call you and say how much you've changed their lives because you've actually sold them. And so that's the benefit. Like, on the other side of with the people, like, there's the good part of people, which you can get heaps of satisfaction from, job satisfaction.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the way I like to look at it as well is you actually change someone's life. Like, your job is most of your week, right? So in some cases, you see your colleagues more than you see your own family. So if we can place somebody in a position where that brings out the happiness in them and that brings out the best in them, they've got good earning potential, they're thriving in that position, it actually changes and impacts every single area of their life. And the best things when you register a candidate who's had a bit of a tough time, a bit of a tough experience, and you put them in their perfect role because they wouldn't have known about the business. So there's definite wins. But what's that saying in recruitment? Is it champagne and razor blades? Is that what people say? So true.
Yeah, I've used that one a few times after hearing that.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and so the other thing I want to talk about is, Sharni, I know you've also made the transition. So we got Kris on team recruitment, and now we've got Sharni on team sales. So you're now helping out, and you've done a bit of a swap. So how have you found transitioning into the sales side of things outside of recruitment?
Yeah. So what we've done now, kind of coming off the back of all the time that I had to lay there and stare at the ceiling in between throwing up, I had a lot of thinking time about business and about recruitment businesses and just our lifestyle as well, and like what we're really passionate about and what we want to create. And so I recognized, like, I'd seen what Kris had been doing in the remote sales space, and coming off the back of our conversation here, like, talk about changing lives. Like, if you can give someone the potential to earn $40K a month at home with their family or in Bali, wherever they want to be, selling someone else's product, not having to run their own business, that can change someone's life dramatically. And so I was witnessing this happen, and I was thinking, there's lots of candidates out there, like, who I know want remote work. Like, we all know as recruiters, one of the biggest questions we get now is there flexibility? Is there ability to work remote? It's one of the first things that candidates ask. And so I was witnessing this, and then witnessing what Kris was doing in the remote sales space. And I just said to Kris, like, I'd read a book that Kris had recommended as well called The Dip. And it speaks about, like, think about the thing that you want to be the best in the world at. And if you are doing something and it feels hard, then you've really got to ask yourself, do you want to be the best in the world at this thing? And I looked at like recruiting real estate agents in Newcastle, and I thought, I don't really want to be the best in the world at that thing. Like it's great, and it's we've helped lots of people, and that's really great. But if I think about our lives long term, that's not it. And so we decided to transition the business to recruit remote salespeople and specialize in really moving into the remote space. And so that's what we've done. And it's been crazy, like crazy in a good way, in the best way possible.
So it's almost like since making that shift, we've just been rewarded. But it feels like we're swimming with the current. Work is falling into our lap. We've managed to build a really strong talent pool. We've been able to place, and it's just we're in such flow. Whereas previously with the real estate recruiting business within sort of Newcastle, it was just definitely felt like you're swimming against the tide. Every day was a battle. It was an absolute grind. So what we found is just within this space, it's just when you're in flow and you made the right decision, if it feels easy.
That's when you're on the right path as well, right? And I think as business owners, I don't know about you guys, but I had to try a whole bunch of things to get to that place, like heaps of different things, different types of sales, different types of recruitment, different levels. And I finally found my sweet spot, which is kind of similar to yours, actually, in terms of recruiting recruiters, but alongside that offering the training as well, which was the little mini value add, and it's now turned into a full-time business. But that's honestly where I have my flow. My flow is in teaching recruiters the personal branding. Like, it feels easy for me. I love it. I enjoy it. And I find it's just so much easier to win business and convert people. So I'm like, you know what, this is my little path now. And it just makes you so much happier, doesn't it, when you've got that sweet spot and you're like, this is working. Everything I've learned and worked towards is finally paying off.
Oh, it's resonating so much. I've got little goosebumps because that's exactly how we feel now. Like, we've launched a course for remote sales, well, people who want to transition into a career in remote sales. And so Kris is kind of heading up that side of things, but I jump on as a coach in the program as well.
In the recruitment side of it. So she sort of gives our candidates, tips and coaching on how to put themselves forward and how to apply and put themselves ahead of other candidates in a pretty hotly contested market for talent, which is the remote sales space. So it's been super well received, and it just continues to grow on the agency that we have, which grows the talent. But we've been able to place multiple candidates already. A month or not even 6 weeks into the business, we've been able to place multiple people that have joined our program to then to have been the best fit for the businesses we've been recruiting for. It's been fantastic.
I love that. You know what's so funny is that people that have enrolled in my program, I'm like, these are top tier candidates. They're investing their own money to better themselves. And then when you get the conversation going, usually you realize that you've got a better opportunity for them. And you also know you're doing the client a good service as well, because you've got the best candidate that's investing in themselves. So it comes back around. And then the candidate's happy as well, because they're like, I invested my money with you, but I've kind of like 10x that immediately because I've got a new job now with higher potential. So it's such a good solution, isn't it, for the market?
We had a candidate who on the absolute bare bones of his backside when it comes to finances, and but knew that he wanted to build a career in remote sales. He knew that he needed skills to get hired. We actually put him forward a few times, and he sort of didn't. He was okay, but he wasn't really where he needed to be to kind of win the roles. And he joined the program with almost his last, dollars that he had. So he joined the program. Within a week, we were able to get him hired based upon, I'd say, largely, we got him a trial at a company, that one of our clients. So it was an extra hire for us as well. But
it was an extra placement.
It was extra placement, but we got a trial. And then part of the reason that they hired him was because of the fact that he backed himself, he'd invested in his education. And that attitude shines through. And people want those types of people on their team.
Absolutely. I agree. I think it's so important, especially in a sales-based role, because you're constantly growing, right? So we, by running the programs, are attracting those people that are always wanting more. I think there's a lot of people in my network, and obviously this podcast is mainly for recruiters, but there's definitely some recruiters that might have hit that stage where they are thinking, you know what, I like the sales role, but recruitment's too limiting in whatever way or shape or form that may be. So maybe remote sales is a good consideration for them. So what is remote sales? Like, talk to me a little bit. Obviously I know a bit about it, but like, what's the different options if someone wanted to explore that path?
So the remote sales, we work within the remote high ticket sales space. Okay. So we're not selling wines. It's not wine selectors where you've got people with a headset and they're dialing 500 a day through a database. It is mostly working with companies who are selling an information product, like coaches, consultants, agency owners, so property agencies, recruiting agencies, marketing agencies, anyone who sells stuff via an online sort of format. So paid advertising, they've got paid ads, and there's a bit of a funnel where the sales process can be completed virtually. And the product's usually sort of $2,000-$3,000 or more, so up to $100,000 or even more when it comes to the product sort of ticket price. These types of products need to be sold with a human, so they can't be sold with a checkout or like a sales page. There needs to be some consulting, some guidance, some trust built. And that's where our clients who have the products that they look to sell, they need appointment setters and closers to tap into the leads, to guide them through the decision-making process, to educate them on their products, and then ultimately to convert the business. So predominantly there's two types of roles that we mostly recruit for, which are appointment setters. And within that, there are multiple levels of being an appointment setter. There's, a straight cold caller right through to, setters who are qualifying reasonably warm leads and then setting the appointments for the closers, sort of more like an associate resourcer, like a candidate resourcer. And then you've got the sort of advisor or the account executive or the consultant who is the closer, whose job it is to take the qualified business of the qualified lead and to convert. And so most of the sales are done by phone or over Zoom, or they're all either over the phone or over Zoom. And, the appointment setter roles, they start at sort of 65K base. You probably OTs around 90 to some of them are actually earning 120, 130,000 as an appointment setter. Wow. And then for the closing positions, it's, we've got guys who are earning sort of $500,000 as a closer. And it's, warm leads, you're not cold calling, you're not on LinkedIn sort of outreaching to 1,000 people every day, and sort of the company's doing the lead generation, bringing leads into a CRM, and then the sales team just harvest that and sort of go after the database leads.
Oh, wow. So many similarities between recruitment, right? So I feel like there's so many people, especially if we think about like the fact it's remote as well. Sometimes I register candidates, and particularly working mums, who will say to me, I want to move roles, but I've been in this current position 5 years and I'm trapped now because no other business will let me work remote for that initial period of time to get up and running, or, a few days in the office at least. So that's a great opportunity for people to transition really their skill set. So, and
the parallels between recruiting and sales are just, someone who's recruited before is very attractive to a business as definitely as an appointment setter, if not to start. And then the career progression pathway, there is a lot of progression from the appointment setter role to then becoming a closer.
Okay. So would people typically start as an appointment setter before they become a closer, or could there be somebody whose strength is in that relationship and closing already so they can skip the appointment setting part?
Yeah. So people who bring a lot of life experience, a lot of industry experience, a lot of sales experience, they've got a lot of authority just generally with their personality. They would be more suited to an appointment, to a closer, and could easily step on. And it's the same as could people start as a recruitment consultant versus do they need to start as a resource? It would be the same thing. So I could potentially start as a recruitment consultant, and probably wouldn't need to start as a resourcer if I wanted to go into a full-time career. So it'd be the same thing. The same qualities that you'd need as a recruitment consultant to manage clients and to deal with those sorts of relationships, what a closer would need.
Interesting. I love that. I love that alternative, actually. I wanted to touch on as well is actually being a mum, and because a mum and dad, actually, you're both new parents, and you're both founders of a business. You're both very busy people. You're both in hustle mode. How do you manage it?
It's not a perfect science, that's for sure. And I feel like every time we think we've got it managed, it changes, and then all of a sudden we're in like an absolute shit show again. So it's evolving. But I think you need to, obviously, if you're in recruitment, you know how to work with dynamic situations. So that's definitely helped. But yeah, so it's been interesting. Indy's 7 months old now, and we went full time, I guess, kind of. I came back from work about 6 weeks ago, and we really launched this new brand officially. We've been doing lots of work, but it was more referrals and stuff. So we've been going hard for 6 weeks now. And I guess the biggest thing, I was saying to Chris the other day, the biggest thing I've noticed that is different now as a mum than before when I was a founder and I only had myself to worry about, is that before, when I needed to get something done, or we were going to a new level in business, or had lots of roles on, or whatever it was, I could just work harder. And that option was always there for me. Like, I'm happy to put in the hard work. And I think anyone who wants to be successful in recruitment has to, it's the reality. There's going to be points in your career where you have to work really hard. And so that was always an option. And that was kind of my go-to. Like, my go-to was always just grind for 6 weeks, place these roles, do a good job. You know, there'll be a time where things will be a little bit more chill. Or maybe not. I don't think they ever were.
You aim for that. Never happens.
Yeah, it never seems to happen. But yeah, I could just work harder and I could just work more hours, and that was my go-to. Whereas now I've got Indy to worry about, and I can't just work harder. I can't just put more hours in, because it's not fair on her, and I really feel it as a mum. Like, there is a cap on my hours, on my time. And so what I've noticed is that I now need to be a little bit more strategic in how I manage my support and what parts of my life I outsource, and like really kind of keeping a line, a very clear line of like what is something that's good for me to be doing, and that's a dollar productive activity that's like I should be doing that, and what's something that someone else should be doing. And so an example is like, we have a nanny, and the nanny will cook for us. The nanny will do the washing, because if I look at what we pay the nanny per hour, I could be on a recruitment, I could be placing a role at a much higher wage. But
The way we look at that is that we're both high dollar producers, and if we were to work for a company, you know, we'd be paid a very high salary. Or if one of us had a company, we wanted to hire the other, it would come with a huge price tag, and it would be a big hire. So having us both together in the one team, we're both capable of so much, and so we feel really lucky and fortunate that we're in the position that we can actually, you know, hire or pay for a nanny. And so, yeah, I mean, that definitely Sharni does feel it though. So a bit of that guilt of not doing the mum thing all the time. I think it's difficult. And this week, for example, like our regular nanny couldn't make it on Monday. So we were like, just totally, like, we'd had a podcast. So we filmed a podcast. So we'd had a 7 a.m. podcast that was booked in with one of our clients, who's also like a big personality. So it was, we're pumped up for it. We got up in the morning, we were ready to go, and it was 7 a.m. because he had to go to ARIC, which is the conference up here. And we got up, and then we got this message that her partner was really, really ill. Yeah. And that she couldn't make it. So now we're like, oh, wow. So we had her booked now she's not booked. Now we're like, okay,
Indy's coming to the podcast.
Indy's coming to the podcast studio, and then we're deciding, okay, do we try to give her Indy to one of the girls at the podcast studio, or can Sharni sit in on the podcast with Indy? There was just no way that was going to work. So so we had to sort of improvise that day. I took the podcast. Sharni had to take Indy for a walk. Then during the day, I actually took the role of dad, so I didn't have as much in my calendar as Sharni. So I did most of the parenting, and then got work done while she was sleeping. And also, I was on Facebook in the groups looking for a replacement nanny. So we found someone who back up, not a replacement, but backup. And we found a backup. So the next day, we were able to get someone. She's been fantastic. The backup's been awesome.
Wow.
We were like, man, we hadn't planned for that. We didn't have a plan. We just never really considered the fact that our nanny might not be able to make it one day.
I think the thing with recruitment though is you don't pick your own hours. Like, you definitely have to put in the work. Like, that's probably not the right way to say it. But I think when you get, for your listeners who are like maybe just starting out their career, when you get to a certain point in your career, you do get a lot of flexibility. And what I've noticed as well coming back to work, now that I am, like, I'm pretty far along. I'm not as far as a lot of people, but I've got so much experience now that I feel so effective when I'm working. And so I can do like hour blocks of work and I like just smash it out the park. Whereas before I had to put a lot more time and thought into how I approach different situations or sourcing candidates. Like, I don't know if it's the same for you, Jess, but like, I just feel so effective now.
Oh my gosh, so true. I feel like when you know what you know, you can just go, right, okay, that's what I need to achieve. 1 hour time block, done. When you're in the beginning phases, you're like, I know I need to get there, but I have no idea what all of these steps are in order to get there. So you're on YouTube, you're learning, you're trialing things, you're testing things, you're reflecting what worked, what didn't. And for you to do what would now take us a 1 hour task, it probably took us like 10 or more hours previously, right? So you work out your own systems. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I feel like these days, like anything like marketing, like lead gen, recruitment related, I'm like, boom, boom, boom. I know where my talent pools are and I can fill a role in like 5 hours. Whereas before it would take like 50 hours. So yeah, you're right. I think with the experience comes automation as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was just, there's that saying, like, it's not about the hours you put in, but what you put in the hours. And it's like when you have that experience, you know, your hours are so much more quality and you don't have to do the quantities of hours as someone who's got experience with this space. So, which I think is really powerful.
Talking about hours, one of my mentors, he taught me something, which is, it's know your number. Have you ever heard of like know your number? I think there's a few people who do this.
Maybe, but I'd like to hear more. I don't know it intimately enough for it to use it.
I feel like you'll love it because it's all about like the outsourcing part as well. So what you have to do is you know your number. So let's just say hypothetically you go, my number is I want to earn $1 million per year. But I want to take 8 weeks holiday per year. I think that's reasonable. I want a 2-week holiday per quarter. What you then do is you take 8 weeks away from 52. So you have 44 weeks in your year. And then you divide 1 million by 44 weeks. And then you get your weekly number. Then you break that down into the hours that you want to work per week. And then you'll get your number. So your number, I know this is just me making it up, I haven't worked this out, but your number could be on the basis of that. You need to make $2,000 an hour, let's just say, or actually, let's say $500 an hour, let's be reasonable. So you're like, okay, well, if a task isn't a sales call, which could potentially make me that amount of money or that placement, it's not worth my time. If this is me reviewing a document, for example, and it's going to take me an hour, you need to get like a VA or something to take over that component, that operational component. So it's ultimately about like figuring out and working backwards what you want to earn. And then your time is worth that amount of money and you don't do tasks that won't generate that.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that a lot.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a pretty cool activity. And yeah, look, that's what you can always aspire to. Obviously, it takes time to build up, but it's actually pretty good, and it made me think very differently about the activities that I did, because it's so easy to fill your calendar up and time block with, you know, getting back to people or messages and emails. My emails could be a full-time job. So now I have to time block. I'm like 1 hour a day, and if I don't reply in that hour, I'll have to reply tomorrow, because otherwise I'll just reply to people 24/7 and won't get anything done.
Yeah,
So
I think it's easy to do as a recruiter as well, because you do always have so many people coming in. There's so much that you could do. Like, recruitment's never a job that's done. You could just find stuff to fill your calendar and feel busy doing. But yeah,
Man, that was what, when I was working in the days where Sharni was sick, I was astonished by how a day, an empty calendar day could just evaporate, and then all of a sudden at the end of the day, what have I gotten? What have I achieved today? I didn't get anything done except just spent time on the phone between candidates and clients and just putting out fires.
It's so easily done, isn't it? Like, my rule is I try and time block from like 7 a.m. till 11. I'm like productive money making activities. 11 onwards, I'll answer calls, I'll do emails, like all of this type stuff. But it all leads to the bigger picture. You need to do a lot of it, but you need to make sure you get your productive tasks done. Otherwise, you fall behind.
I think time blocking for those types of activities, I think, so super key. So having your dollar revenue generating time every day is non-negotiable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you've both got some really solid strategies around that as well, in terms of like the traits, the habits, you know, what it is that you put into your day to make sure you succeed. So talk to me a little bit about that. What do you do to set yourself up for success?
It's a little bit loose now that we've got the baby. Before, it's really funny actually, because before we had the baby, Chris and I were both, I think, quite similar in that we had a very structured routine. We would make sure we got our 8 hours of sleep. We would make sure we got in and did the gym of a morning. We'd wake up early.
We mostly do ice baths of an evening, saunas, a lot of journaling, very rigid with goal setting, and we still maintain all of those things. We just put a home gym downstairs into our garage, so we've got to solve the problem of not being able to get to the gym as much as we'd like, or Sharni having to be at home while the baby's here, and then not really having another option if we're with Indy. So that's like, it's definitely changed. We now go a bit more with the flow and be okay if we don't get all of our routines in. And I have put a post up on Facebook that was like, me before kids. I need 8 hours of sleep and, to go to the gym and everything to perform at my best. And now me after kids, give me 5 hours of broken sleep and, 2 cups of coffee in a cold shower, and I'll still crush it. And so I think as parents, like, we have so much more respect for parents and just how you have to adapt through the sort of newborn phase. Now we're getting luckier because we're getting more of a routine because she's sleeping a bit more. But yeah,
it's changed. Like, for me, I used to have really big kind of time consuming things. The concept to me is still the same. So for me, even something just as small as, like, I don't even really buy into the whole essential oil thing, but I've got a little ritual at the moment where when we get up in the morning, we put our little essential oil mix on, and that's just like having that kind of like anchor in the day to go, all right, we're switching now from parent mode to work mode. This is my little kind of ritual routine. Put that on, get ready for the day. And that kind of, just finding little moments and little things that I can do that still anchor the mindset shift and the state shift. I think how you turn up in the day is super important. And like, I had a call yesterday where I was interviewing, I was on a client interview, and like the candidate was answering in a way that I knew the client wasn't going to like. And like, it was one of those situations where I could feel my state changing. I could feel like the adrenaline start to kick in. I was getting a little bit anxious. And I very easily could have, if I didn't manage my state in that situation, I wasn't conscious of it, I very easily could have reacted in a way that probably wouldn't have been the best long term. But I think just being conscious of that, like take a breath and calm your state before responding. Yeah, just little things like that. So that's how it's changed for us, I think, is, you know, going from the big stuff just to even in the moments, just taking a breath can be what.
I think just having fluidity for me is just learning that it's not essential to have to be for me to have everything that I used to think I needed to performance and mindset for me now. And I feel, you know, every day I'm filled with gratitude. I feel grounded because we've got a great family. I feel like we're in a great home. We've got a great business. And so it feels easy for me to feel good and in flow, even when I'm not, maybe I haven't gone to the gym that day because I had an early, like we had a podcast and the babysitter didn't show up and all that stuff. And so I didn't get the gym. And but then I still feel good. And I think for me, I used to really beat myself up, and that was almost as detrimental as not doing it is the fact of how I frame it. So for me, it's a mindset. As long as I can, I really feel good and I feel on point mentally, it tends to shift into physical and not the other way. Yeah, and the other way around. It used to be the other way around. I really tried to cultivate it through all of my habits to try to get me into a peak state. Now I just find the peak state and the peak mental state, and then that ripples out.
That's so interesting. Do you think that whole like managing your own state piece comes from like practice over a long period of time? Or do you think there was like a certain shift in your mindset because you did have a baby where you're like, well, this just is what it is now. I accept this because what else am I going to do about it? Or a mixture of both, perhaps?
I think it's definitely been a mixture of both for me. It's always been something I've worked on a lot, especially having your own business. I think there's like, well, even just working in recruitment, like, there's lots of things during your day that could make you fly off the handle. But I think what is the concept, like the speed, the next play speed? I think that's really important. And so that's about like when setbacks happen or something happens that does kind of shift your state. I think that next play speed, to be able to recover from that really quickly and just move on to the next thing, that really sets recruiters apart, sets salespeople apart. It's a big thing in sales, but it's the same in recruitment. Like if something happens and you have a cry about it, I mean, I'm normally quite big, so I might have a cry. But if you cry about it for an hour, like that's an hour worth of work that you could have done that could have got you back doing dollar productive things.
I think that's a habit. Quickly. I think that is a habit, though. I think that builds as a habit. Like your resilience is a bit of a habit, and you know your ability to bounce back is a habit. Your ability to take things really personally and let like a small hiccup ruin your day, you know that's also a habit and detrimental habit. And since sales and recruiting, the same thing. You've always got a reason to feel upset. You've always got a reason to get triggered and getting rejected. You're getting people let you down every day, almost every hour. So you need to for me, my resilience and mental I think ability to bounce back comes from having just being hardened by the amount of crap that's happened and the amount of stuff I've had to deal with. And so I feel like I've got a really thick skin now. And there's also seasons where I'm growing, I'm developing, I'm like really wanting to get bigger in size or like lean down or like really optimize my presence through meditation and through everything. And so it's a project. It's not the business. It's not just normal business as usual, not normal kind of optimal, just regular state. I'm sort of growing it. It's a focused project. So me now, I'm okay with where I'm at. I'm okay with not having to water the plant of like being really big or like being able to run 4-minute Ks or whatever. So I'm okay with it because I know I'm going to be able to get back there soon when it becomes a priority, when there's space. I think a lot of people can really get caught up in that too much. But then again, on the other side, people don't have a routine and they're totally, they're fully overweight or they're just totally like a mess. Yeah, you probably need to focus. You probably need to like make some space in your life to really focus on that. So potentially that's where, that's the difference.
Yeah, I feel like when you're someone who's done these practices for many years, you can forgive yourself when you forget once a week, twice a week, or you don't do it, because you know that 80-90%'s there and you know that it's consistent. It's not like you've done it for a year and it's just, dropped off the face of the earth and that's it, right? You get overweight, you start losing your mind. It's okay, look, this is slipping slightly. I've put on a couple of kilos, but that's fine. I'll lose that in a couple of months. And you become more accepting when it becomes more of a habit. I think as well,
you've almost earned the right. You've almost earned the right to do that because of the work you put in. Whereas, because you put yourself in a position to actually be able to put on a few kilos and not be a big problem, and that's part of all the work that you're putting in regularly.
100%. And I think, look, if you've got the structure and you miss one day every now and then, like it really is not going to impact. It's the consistency, isn't it? And the other thing is as well, I feel like when I was employed, I had the luxury of feeling sorry for myself. I feel like since I've had a business, I look at my to-do list and I'm like, I don't have time to be sad, on to the next, because it's like my responsibilities are now bigger than my sadness. Whereas when I was employed, I was like, I could be sad. I'm still getting paid the same.
Oh.
Yeah, that's very true. That is that's very true.
The employee mind, you just don't have time to to feel down.
Yeah, that's it.
And you've got to manage yourself as well. Like you're the you've got to manage yourself, and you're your own leader. There's no one to blame but you if the job doesn't get done.
Well, that's the big thing too when you have a team. Like if you're I noticed that a lot. Like if I reacted big to something that went wrong, my team would really feel it. Like it just impacted everything, even it was multiplied significantly. So yeah, I think I definitely had to learn the skill when I started having people around me who were kind of, something would go wrong and then they'd look to me for how I'd react, and I'd be like, on the inside, oh my God, what the fuck? But on the outside, I'm like, it's fine, we'll just call the client, fix it up, no worries.
Isn't it funny that as a boss, people look up to you and they expect you to have the answers, and sometimes you're thinking, I don't have the answers either, but we'll just roll with it this way. That's it. I'll just back myself and hope for the best. Well, that's my experience anyway.
Yeah, we're all making it up. We're still making it up. We're just we just are better at making it seem like we know what we're doing.
Yeah, a little bit more data to go off maybe as well. Like last time I did this, so I'm not going to do that again. You know what? Experience, data. I've got such a good relationship with my operations manager now that when she first started like a year ago, she would ask me questions and I'd be like, we just do this. And I would kind of be like, I think this is what we do, but it's kind of new to me. Whereas now I'll just message her back and I'll be like, I have no idea what we're doing. Let's just wing it, right? What's our plan of action? Who are we going to learn from? What YouTube videos are we going to watch? And we'll be sending each other links to things. And that's literally how we overcome our problems when it's anything new. So
YouTube's the best. YouTube's the best for learning.
I love it. YouTube. I feel like my entire education comes from YouTube.
It's the new university.
That's what someone said on their application the other day, didn't they? YouTube University.
Yeah, I'm watching heaps of YouTube. Yeah. I'm ready to go.
I appreciate it though, because I feel like, I don't know if do you guys watch Alex Hormozi's videos on YouTube? Yeah. I learned so much from him, and I'm like, you know what? I'm in like the University of Alex Hormozi on YouTube for free.
He should monetize. Well, I mean, he does what he does, but
yeah, he's amazing.
Full of gold.
Awesome. Well, look, let's wrap up this. The final question I always ask all podcast guests is, what would you say moving forward in 2024 are the top 3 traits that recruiters should have in order to be successful?
I'll start.
You start?
Or do you want to start? You were about to say something.
Did you say me? No, you start. You go.
Look at us. We're so polite. We're not polite like this when we're working together. I think the biggest one for me, and this all comes from my experience as well, so I think what has contributed to my success in recruitment, it's sort of what Kris touched on earlier. I've always really taken the time with people and really focused on building relationships, not through the lens of what I'm going to gain from it, because I think in recruitment there's so many examples of times where I've spent time with a candidate or called someone back when I really didn't probably need to because they didn't really fit a job I had advertised, but I've really spent the time and given value advice or just helped people with not really anything to gain out of it. And that has always come back to me in some way. Like there's always been, whether it's directly or there's been the funniest situations that you would never have thought, at the beginning of that relationship that it would turn out the way it did. But I think that's been a really big one. So I think for anyone who is starting out in recruitment, like treat your candidates well. Never burn a bridge, never, dismiss somebody because, like, one, you're going to feel better about yourself, but also you never know how that will come back to you. Yeah, and your brand is such a big thing. Like, I think what you do is fantastic with recruiters because you will. Like, it probably doesn't feel like it when you first start out, but you are building a brand every single day.
Yeah. Every conversation is your reputation, isn't it? So it's so important. I'm the same as you. I've actually got people who have left me LinkedIn recommendations and they've never paid me $1. I've never placed them. And they're like, Jess is so giving with her time. She helped me with this and that. And I'm like, oh, bless, that's so sweet. And to me, I'm like, all I did was speak to you for 20, 30 minutes, but they appreciate it because nobody else did that for them. And it goes so far. And then you get referrals and things off the back of that. So like you say, it always comes back around. But also I feel happy that I've done that for somebody as well, right? And help them in some way. So yeah, love it. Great tip.
Kris. I think I'm going to use one just with sales. I think recruiters, to be really successful, we need to still be really assertive. We need to build relationships and be people focused, but we also need to know when it's time to really close and close a candidate on the right role for them when they're feeling a bit iffy, or if they're sort of deciding on maybe they might take a counter offer. We need to be able to convert and close those candidates, and then on the flip side, close the clients on the business, like signing up, and then closing clients on the right candidate, clients who are potentially, as we've had, where they starting to kind of make silly decisions, or maybe the decision to not interview someone because of a small thing. We need to be able to be assertive enough or confident enough to direct the client and to kind of take control.
Yeah, I remember we were doing some training early on in my career, and there was this whole discussion about we are consultants. Like, you aren't an order taker. You, as a recruitment consultant, you are paid to consult with your client. And so there's definitely times where, we've both pushed back on clients big time. And again, like, it always comes from a place of love and like care. But there are times where you need to have sort of tough conversations with people in recruitment
and guide their decision making, and not be a customer service. So here's a candidate. What do you think? Let me know. No, okay. It's like, here's a candidate. We've vetted this person. They've matched the criteria. They're epic. We want you to interview this person. When are you free? So, maybe not in that sort of bulldozer terms, but being a trusted consultant, not a order taker.
Yeah, I love it. I think as well, I totally agree with that. And I think there's been so many times where on paper, the best candidate doesn't get hired, and the wild card, they meet with your client and your client calls you, they're like, I love them. And I'm like, told you. And that's the plot, right? They never would have had them up if you don't consult and push back and say, no, like, you have to meet this person. Even if it's just 20 minutes, you have to meet this person. And if they do, then it's, they've got the perfect person for their team then. And it ultimately comes down to us controlling the outcome, which is in everyone's best interest anyway. I think that's sometimes where recruitment gets a bit of a bad rap, because it's like the influencing and persuading side. It's like, so you're telling people to take jobs that maybe they don't want to take. And it's like, no, people are emotional and they make decisions based on that. We're just guiding them to the right place and removing that fear sometimes, or the uncertainty. So
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love it.
Same with candidates as well, closing candidates on the right role, and or even taking an interview, which we had last year, where we turned someone around. They weren't going to take an interview. We managed to convince them to take the interview, and now it's been the best. They were hired, best career decision they've ever made.
That's
the third
it.
one.
So any candidates watching, keep your options open. just go for the
Listen to your
interviews and see
recruiter.
what happens. Yeah, listen to your recruiter. We do know. We do try and help, I promise. Awesome. And who wants to give the third?
You go.
I can give the third. So I think this is for kind of maybe the more junior recruiters. Definitely you need hunger and you need to be attached to the bigger vision for your career, because I think some people in the first couple of years of their recruitment career, especially if they've come from different industries, it can feel like they're doing a lot of work and maybe not getting the reward. But I don't know if this was the same for you, Jess. There's definitely a tipping point in your career where all that hard work really starts to pay off in droves. And so if you can be hungry and committed and just really dedicate yourself in those first couple of years of your recruitment career, then that not only will that stand out to your employer, it will get you lots of different opportunities, it will open lots of doors for you, but it will also come back to you over time. So I think just having hunger and dedication to really mastering what you do is a big one.
The first couple of years are the hardest. Once you've got the skill, you can recruit anything, any role, any industry. It's those first couple of years, isn't it? Breaking through.
Yeah.
It's like any career though as well, like real estate, any sales even. So it's just so that initial learning curve is so steep. And then once you have gotten over that little bit, it's not easy, but it's you're in flow.
Yeah, love it. Look, Sharni and Kris, thank you so much for being on the Be Raire podcast. You've given such valuable insights, so much information on sales as well, which I know is a huge pain point in this space. So look, thank you both so much for your time.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Jess.
Jess. What a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.